Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another amazing guest lined up for you today, Dr. Benjamin Ritter. With over 10 years of experience coaching and developing talent at top companies like Amazon, Google, and Pinterest, Ben understands how to navigate any career path, whether empowering young professionals or guiding senior leaders to stand out and lead with confidence. Armed with a doctorate in organizational leadership, plus an MBA and MPH, he's an expert who will help you truly live for yourself at work and beyond. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. When you said "and beyond," I was like, "Oh, are we in like a Star Trek episode? Let's do it. Let's get a little futuristic here." I'm excited.
I love talking about the future. Maybe we'll dive into that in just a bit because there actually are a few questions I had on the top of my head actually around that in the future. But before we do dive into it, we do like to have a bit of an icebreaker on this show. And the question for you today was, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
Right now, I'm totally Jerry from Tom and Jerry. I am the fun-loving mouse that is avoiding attacks from all sides easily, seamlessly, and has this like carefree approach to life, and is also like fairly innovative. He's like, oh well, we're gonna innovative and has a strong sense of imagination to be able to, pull off some of the things that he can and have a pretty good life, I think.
I like that. I think out of everyone I've talked to, I think you're the first one that said Jerry specifically. Interesting. But I like it because, it's true. He's always running around. He's thwarting Tom. And yeah, I really like that.
Yeah,
So
he's never really in trouble. He's figuring things out. He's being innovative. He's seeing life in a positive way. And he's never like actually angry at the cat. He's always just like, okay, you're doing your thing. Like, I'm just not going to get hurt by it.
yeah, definitely like that. So before we get into your journey, because I do want to get into your journey and how you got to be where you are, how do you define procrastination and what does it mean for you personally?
Procrastination, not doing things that you feel like, or not doing things that align with your values and your goals. And for me personally, I'm pretty values forward. I do things that matter. And I think it relates to fearlessness. In my book, Becoming Fearless, my company, Live for Yourself, it is very much showing up to life intentionally and in a way that matters to you and without concern of others. So I have more of a not-do list than I have a to-do list. I have a do list and the things that I know I need to do and will do every single day, and try not to have a lot of the crud in between. And if I'm not doing something, then either I need to figure out why it's important or I need to get rid of it.
I like that. That ties into when the why is high, the cost is low. And if you don't have a why do it?
Yeah, I'm not someone that you generally can pressure into doing things. And I'm generally not going to hold myself to do something that I'm generally not going to be sitting there wondering why I can't do something. Like I've kind of always been a doer, but generally too, the doing relates to, self-identity, like who I am and what I'm trying to achieve.
I like that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? So what got you to where you are today?
Well, where I am today is someone who cares very deeply about health, the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional aspects of it. So your career as well as your personal life. I am graced with the opportunity to be a leader coach, executive coach, a talent development facilitator, and leader assessor. So I get to work in the world of how do I make people's work better and how do I make leaders more effective. And I got here because I was working in healthcare, pretty unhappy with my job, with terrible leaders all around me, and was pretty much blaming my organization for the situation that I was in. I thought that they were supposed to give me meaning. And because I was in that negative headspace and because I thought my job was wrong, I gave up any opportunity to make it right. And it led to negative relationships. It led to me not creating kind of like a professional network that could lend itself to me being more successful. I basically was wasting time, giving my time away because I was angry at my job and my leaders. And luckily, I had a little bit of a come to moment. I actually got selected for a leadership development program. I didn't know those existed. And I got paired up with a mentor, the guy who ran the program across 13 different hospital sites. And it was the first time where he gave me the opportunity to realize that coaching, the realm of personal development, could be applied to our professional life. And it's just weird that I didn't realize that at the time, because actually my story before that related very much to personal development. I like had my own personal development journey. When I lost soccer, I wanted to be a professional athlete. If you've ever lost something that you thought was you realize that you have no you left. And so I had to go on a journey to figure out who I was, to build confidence and to explore the world. And as a guy, if you go online and type in how to be confident or how to figure out who you are, you generally get dating advice. So I dove into the world of personal development and persuasion and interpersonal dynamics, and had like a 4 or 5 year self-learning window where I just dedicated all of myself to learning about who I was and how to be confident with that person. And funny, you take all that learning and you're just like, oh, I could apply that to my job. I could apply that to my professional career. I could apply that to visioning and career clarity and career confidence and how to show up intentionally to your job and to create a leadership brand. Never really made the connection until I got paired up with that leadership coach. And so when I realized what was happening and that I was responsible for it, I was accountable and I was empowered to change my career, I made a decision to do that and realized that talent development and leader coaching was a place that blended my passions and my skills for coaching, for making a difference in the world of public health or health of the world overall, and leadership development. So to ensure that we could create organizations and an environment and provide a service that helped people where I was struggling. And so I went back to my coach and I went back to my boss at the time and said, I want to work in this space. How do I get involved? And I immediately started working on some projects in the organization. So you think that might be like the end of the story, but we got acquired for the third time. Everyone I was working with lost their jobs. All the projects I was working on got paused. And so I had to figure out a different path. And so I decided to go back and get my doctorate and go learn, become an expert in the space instead of wait for my company to figure things out. And over that time, about a year and a half into the curriculum, realized that I also wanted to take my experience in coaching and build a new coaching practice in the space, while also building a professional career. So through that time, I was a regional learning director. I was head of talent development for an organization. I've been a senior talent management consultant, and through then I've also built a pretty booming one-on-one practice.
Excellent. I really love that story. And you're right. I mean, personal development, we don't really think we can apply it to other areas of our life, or we might not even know it exists. So, it's really great to hear someone who's, taken those philosophies and actually applied it to their work life, because most of us don't get there until we kind of have some sort of, implosion, explosion, whatever the case may be, right? And then we start to say, okay, maybe I should start working on this and figure that out. But you're absolutely right. When you said we often tie our identities to something, and that could be work, could be soccer, could be something, and then we have to go back and figure out who we are. What were some of the first steps that you took, or that you advise people to take when they're trying to find that out?
Yeah. By the way, the career disappointments, the career trauma, as you might want to call it, lent itself to me giving up in the workplace and being in the mindset that I was in. I think a lot of us are going into work each and every single day with stories from maybe a toxic leader or a layoff or a terrible work environment, no work-life balance, and they're taking those stories and having them define what work is. And that's what kind of holds us back, because what work isn't what work was. And we have to act like what we want work to be right now to be able to make any changes. And again, my story, I had, 3 layoffs. I mean, with 4 different jobs cut that were signed on a dotted line before I even started, like a week before my start date. I lost soccer. My major was canceled. Like there was like all these things that happened where I was like, oh, work isn't supposed to work out, I guess. And just kind of went with things. I was reactive instead of proactive in my career. And I think that's what we let our limiting beliefs hold us back from what's possible in our professional life. And to your question though, like, how do you figure out what you want to do? Is that kind of the main question? Like, how do you do that career audit?
Yeah. How do you do that career audit?
Well, Well, first, we are a culmination of our experiences, of who we've met, who we've worked with, the topics that we've learned about. And so it's understanding like, well, who is that person? Who are we? Who's informing our decisions today? And so taking a look at our defining moments from our past, from our personal and professional life, the skills that you have, the things that you've learned, the mentors that you've met, and to kind of just bring all this information together and see what you learn about yourself. Generally, that information also informs our values. It informs how we are filtering decisions. And we can then ask ourselves, well, which of these values do I want to have? Which values am I defining improperly so they're negatively impacting my life? So maybe I need to redefine them. And what are my aspirational values? Like, what would I like to have more in my life? And then you take that, we kind of build a little, we explore, define, and align our values. And we have this list of, okay, this is who I think I am. And then with who we think we are, we can say, well, what do I want to do with this? What do I want to experience? And that generally becomes our goals. And so our goals come from our values. Our goals aren't arbitrary. If our goals are arbitrary, then we probably end up procrastinating towards them. But what's so beautiful about setting these goals is that they can change. Like, for example, my first goal was go to my boss, ask her to work on projects in talent development. Great, that goal worked, but then that goal didn't work because it got stopped. So then I had to create a new goal. The core value didn't change, or the core interest, which is I want to get experience in talent development. But the goal in terms of how I get there can change. So the path, like where you're going can stay the same, but the path to get there there's an infinite amount of opportunities. So basically you do this career audit to say, who am I? And based on who am I, what experiences do I want to have? And so like what projects do I want to be a part of? What organizations might I want to work in? Who are the types of people that I want to meet? What types of job titles interest me? How do I learn more about those titles? And what are some potential end career positions that I might be able to have? Great. Now, what are the steps that I potentially could take to get there? And so we broaden the possibilities, but narrow the values of what we're actually focused on.
No, that's interesting too. And going back to values, I mean, values are so important in terms of what you're doing in the workplace, right? Because so many times we hear about those, soul-sucking jobs, right? And those soul-sucking jobs are really just you're doing something that maybe doesn't align with your values, or you feel it's not, maybe it's not important. What's your take on, trying to find a job, especially in this market sometimes, that aligns with your values?
Yeah, and part of this is like the chicken or the egg. So we need to eat. And so sometimes we'll take a job and then have to figure out, well, how does it align to our values to motivate us? I've done a lot of odd jobs in my life, from being a costume character to being a barback or bartender to being a door guy to working music festivals. Like, I've done a lot of different things. And one of the mistakes I made in my early career, especially when I was in healthcare, is thinking that I needed to find meaning instead of create it. And so part of understanding your values, then saying, great, I have the tools to make the most of where I am, to re-perceive the position that I'm in to be more aligned with my specific values or my specific interests. Because in jobs, when it comes to satisfaction, it's who you work with, the types of work that you're working on, what you're learning, and then meaning. So values are only a portion of the pie of job satisfaction. So keeping that in mind. And that can come from just perception, or it can come from the actual work. Like, so for example, in healthcare, one of the biggest issues is clinicians and non-clinicians get burnt out. They care very deeply about making a positive impact, but they have enough experiences of negativity, people not being appreciative, rules, regulation, insurance claims, the operational day-to-day, the admin stuff, that they forget that their work is making an impact. And so generally you can reinvigorate and remotivate people that work in those industries by helping them reconnect to the meaning behind their work. So part of it is the work you do, part of it is perception. Let's go back to your question though. Can you share your question to me one more time? Because I got on my value soapbox and I got very excited.
No, that's all right. And I really like what you said. I'd like to hone in just a little bit, especially for our listeners, between the difference between finding meaning, right, and then creating meaning. Because you mentioned that some of it is in the work, but then some of it is the perception. So in terms of finding meaning versus creating meaning, what do you think is the most important aspect?
Yeah, so finding is this concept, this idea that I have to get a certain type of job or a certain type of work or be in a certain type of organization because they align to my values more. Problem is that you can go work for that company and maybe it's nothing what you thought it was going to be like, or it doesn't connect with your values, or it's yeah, there's just a disconnect. So there's a portion of like, I want to be in this realm of existence. I want to be with these types of people. I want to be in this industry because it feels good. It feels right. There's that aspect of it. So you can find that. But really, meaning comes from ourselves. If we don't realize that, then we end up in healthcare in a very meaningful position, hating our job because we think we're supposed to have something different, which is where I was. Creating means that you understand the things that motivate you, the things that energize you, the things that drain you, and also remind yourself of what is meaningful about your work. And you intentionally show up, you craft your job to be more aligned to the things that you feel are meaningful. And again, that can be part perception, which is reminding yourself who you're impacting. It could be going to ask your manager about the impact of your work. It could be broadening your perspective on the impact of your organization, or it can be narrowing it to focus on the impact of a project or something that you're working on. And it can also then be going to your boss and adjusting your workload to say, I want to work more on this type of projects and these types of projects. I want to work with Joanne because Joanne's awesome, but not Scott because Scott's annoying. I want to go to this meeting, but not that meeting. And by the way, in terms of career development, I want to work 10% of my time on this type of work because I want to learn these types of skills. Maybe want to shadow someone in a different department because I have a plan for my career. And those types of things create meaning. But too often, we show up to work, we're afraid of getting fired, losing our job, getting too much work, and saying the wrong thing, and we don't do any of that. Or we're going to work and we go, this job isn't what I want to do anyways, so I'm just going to act like I'm online with my little mouse clicker or whatever it is and read a book or play a game or watch TV. And so we're at work just really actually kind of like working against our own goals because we don't think that our job is meaningful.
And you mentioned something interesting there about, someone needing to take the initiative to go to their boss as well. In your experience in these different organizations you've worked with, do you think it's more effective from the bottom up or from the top down when you're trying to institute those kinds of changes and perceptions and motivations and things like that?
100% has to be both ways. You have to empower the employee that they're responsible, and you have to then empower the leader that they're responsible. So it's very difficult to have one and not the other, but if you have one and not the other, then that one is responsible for helping the other one. So like, for example, I generally work with employees, one-on-one individuals, and I may be working with leaders, but more leaders than not are not getting the leadership they need. So you're at this high level and they're trying to be this great manager for their team, but they haven't done anything to manage up. And managing up is so important in terms of asking for feedback, asking for clarification about what you're supposed to achieve from your role, asking for prioritization of work to help you create bandwidth, and then to provide some sort of recognition for yourself. But to, set those expectations, to share what you want from your career, to ensure that your boss supports you for that, and then hold them accountable to it. So all those types of things are so critical. We have to help our leaders lead us because our leaders generally do want to be helpful, but they think they are. They just don't realize that they're missing the mark most of the time. So, personal empowerment and accountability, but also then there's that aspect of leadership development too. Both very important.
No, I like that. And, just recently we had another guest on the show and he said something interesting and wonder, and you might agree with this or not. He was saying that there was a statistic, 66% of new managers that are promoted from one level to another often fail within the first 12 to 18 months, simply because they just aren't trained to be managers. They just, they're good at their job and they move up, but they're not trained on the interpersonal or the different dynamics of what managing really means. Is that something that you found in organizations as well?
Yeah, the majority of leaders are never received any sort of official leadership training. That's true in the industry. I would say, though, that we could probably solve that issue, though, if we empowered every single employee to be a little bit more proactive in their jobs and in their communication to their manager. But yeah, leadership, one of the reasons why I'm in this field is because leadership development is so it's so underexposed. It's like not as prominent as it needs to be. You put someone into a manager in a leadership position, you expect them to be able to be responsible for a group of other people, but you don't give them the tools to do it. They're going to come up with their own tools, or they're not going to feel confident, or they're going to do what they're used to doing, and that's doing the job. Also not what you want them to be doing. So it is a big gap. in today's world. I think it's partially one of the biggest reasons why we're having the return to office policies right now. And I think leadership development, you've also seen this movement of like people not wanting to move into middle management. I don't know if you've seen those statistics or not, but it was something like 70-80% of Gen Zers are avoiding middle management, that they would turn down those jobs. And so there's going to be a big gap potentially in management and leadership in the near future because there's extra responsibility for minimal pay. And then you got to actually lead people, and there's no training for leading people. Like, I'm just going to do my work. Because also, if I do my work, I can have like 3 jobs. No one knows. So no, it's just saying that like it's a gap, and I think we can solve it, but I'm only one person.
No, I understand. Definitely understand those different points. Many of the people I've talked to have expressed those concerns. It actually kind of segues into something a few friends and I and a couple of think tanks were tossing around. And not sure what you think about this. We were talking about the future before, right? And we were talking about leadership and what's going to happen with AI and what's going to happen with structures of companies and even going on structures of government or structures of anything, right? Where any leadership is needed. And there were a couple of ideas that perhaps middle management jobs or even management jobs would be handed off to artificial intelligence, Um, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know that, the key aspects that you need for leadership, right, are compassion, competency, some level of interpersonal connection, right?
Yeah, true. Powerful middle management is responsible for setting expectations, communicating those expectations, holding people accountable to those expectations, but then creating an environment around the employee to help them achieve those expectations. And then adjusting based on their career development goals, on their strengths, on their areas of improvement, providing resources. Some leaders don't do that. So, if we were just to say, like, what is middle management responsible for from an AI perspective? Is it setting expectations, checking on progress, making sure that they show up to work? Then probably could do that. But from reducing conflict, listening to your employee, helping them feel supported and recognized, and adjusting the work based on who they are, I think those things are going to be very difficult to leverage AI for. We might be able to, but I think that it still requires a little bit of a human touch. AI might be better at recognizing employees. I don't know if an employee is going to feel that it's as important though as getting recognition from a human. So there are still a lot of things that humans can do.
I like that you brought up that you're not sure how they'd feel about recognition from an AI, and yet there's a whole subculture out there. Actually, almost everybody. You feel great when you get a badge on your social media activity. You've made 1,000 posts. Here's a nice little sticker. Or you've or in video games, right? Video games, you get medals for unlocking different things. And some studies have shown that those are really good motivators. But I have to have the same question as well. Is that as valuable as having your mentor or your middle manager saying, hey, you did a good job? Definitely a lot of discussion around that. Do you deal a lot with artificial intelligence in these companies as you're going through these? Do you see it a lot?
Not AI, but gamification has been a part of applied learning theory since I was in my doctoral programs. That's 2015. It's been around for a long time, probably even longer, much longer than that, I imagine. And the problem though is that yes, like it's a motivator, getting a badge and can include engagement during training. But at least from my own perspective, in terms of recognition programs and like gamification in terms of involvement in internal programs like that, very, very low utilization rate. So you have like 1% to 2% of an employee population actually caring about the badges. And so I think that the human to human connection is incredibly more important unless you make gamification and the AI more important. Like, oh, if you do this thing, if you hit enough widgets, you get enough badges and you get a promotion or you get, a 6% raise. And I think, okay, you'll get some people involved. But until you do that, you're still going to have to focus on the human-human connection to provide the recognition if they're interested in that, because it helps them feel more valuable than a metric.
No, and this actually segues into a pretty interesting question as well in terms of motivation. So inside a company, and I imagine every company is different because every company's got different mission, different vision, different values of themselves. But in your experience and what you've witnessed, is it more effective to instill a sense of that purpose or meaning in the job, or is it more important to have sort of the physical, material sort of recognition of that work in terms of like a pay raise or a bonus or something?
Yeah, well, they're both important, and it also shifts depending on the person. So my doctoral research was actually on healthcare leaders who had a very, very high level of meaning, benevolence, intrinsic motivators, but because their intrinsic motivators were so high, their extrinsic motivators ended up becoming a bigger area of opportunity. So you have to think about your population. Like both of them are important. But people have their different minimums. Like you look at people that choose to go work for a nonprofit and they're making less money than someone working at a for-profit company. They've made a decision themselves to earn less money to have this level of intrinsic motivation. So you have to like, who are you working with? What's the culture of your company? And even more individually, like what's the culture on your team? And you need to be pulling the levers of both intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. You also know as an employee, you need to know what's most important for you, but it's going just to be different and variable depending on the person. So you need both, and you need to be cognizant of who you're leading.
Excellent. We did get a little bit off there because I did want to go into actually a little bit about your book as well. I always use this on my show, and I know people hate it, but I love it. So they say writing a book is 98% procrastination and 2% actually working. How true is that in your case with your book?
I have this thing where I get an idea to do it, and it could be this like build the Great Wall. It's like something that will take years upon years upon years upon years upon years of doing. And I'm like, why is it not done yet? So for me, I'm very much of a doer. And the hardest part was actually working with other people, like an editor who was not. And it was a lot of hurry up and wait. And also understanding that doing something fast doesn't mean that you're doing it good. And building in even opportunities to take your time to edit and work with others and to double check things and make sure you did it right, because done is not good. And I wanted to make sure this was great.
And why don't you just give us a little excerpt, just a little teaser of that book here, and see what we can get from it.
Yeah. So basically, it intros the topic of fear, and that fear is information, not fact. And it talks about interrupting the fear cycle and to feeling your feelings and thinking about your thoughts, but not believing your beliefs. And fear is just a belief. And so it's like, it's saying that, well, in each of these areas of your life that you're being held back by fear, there's something that is negatively influencing. Would you like the positive side? If so, if this resonates with you, if you're so uncomfortable that you're not willing to take any action, you're just uncomfortable enough to do something about it, then this is what you should do. And so it's 65 different strategies on how to confront some aspect of fear in your life. And if you just focus on one of those strategies and take a little action, and eventually that fear is not going to become a fear, it's just going to become information that you then can choose on how you want to interpret, and hopefully to lead you towards your goals. Like, for example, if you want a promotion in your life, there's a section that talks about, well, if you want a promotion, you have to act like you're already promoted. You don't wait. One of the biggest issues that people do within the work environment is they don't tell their manager soon enough, and they don't do the work that's going to prove that they already deserve the promotion. So it talks about like, well, why is it that we do that? Like avoid that, and then how to actually take action, little things we can do to ensure that we get that promotion when we want it.
Excellent. There's 65 of those. There's 65 of those tips.
100%, yeah.
That is. I
got asked the other day. I got asked the other day why 65, and I go, because that's what it ended up being. So, like I wrote all the tips for all the book, and then I took ones out that didn't have to do with fear, and ended with, first it was like 62, and then it was like 59, and then it was like 60, 67, and then like with editing and with figuring out what was most relevant to the reader, it became 65. 65 strategies to become fearless in your life. The passport to fearlessness, and I hope you check it out.
No, yeah, I definitely like that, and I definitely encourage everybody. Don't worry, we will be putting a link in the description in order for you to find that. Yeah, I mean, it's on Amazon. It's probably at other places too.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Some libraries, a decent amount around the United States, pretty much all over the world. Ebook, audio, paperback. Highly recommend the paperback. So shouldn't have any issue finding it.
Excellent. Well, we are coming up pretty close to time here. Is there anything from today's discussion that you feel I should have asked, or maybe didn't ask, or Anything we should have covered that we didn't cover today?
Yeah, overall, I talk a lot about self-leadership with my clients. Everything that I do is about taking accountability for what you want to create in the world and feeling empowered to create it. And the only person that needs to give you permission to lead yourself is yourself. And so whatever you want from your leader that you're sitting at work hoping that they do, you can do for you. And so what would you do? How would you act? How would you show up if you were your own leader? And just think about that, journal on it, take some notes, and then do something about it.
Very powerful note to end on that. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Ben. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation or inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.